Welcome back to Plants Not Plastic. I'm Nikita, and today I'm going to show you how to make a vegetable broth using veggie scraps that is delicious, inexpensive, simple, healthy, whole food, plant-based, oil-free, and zero waste. Vegetable scraps are not aesthetic, especially after they've been stocked up and frozen over a period of weeks and then defrosted. But vegetable broth will add a ton of flavor when used in place of water for soups, stews, chili, curry, and even making rice. The way I think about using scraps is I already paid for them and cut them up, so why not get full value out of them rather than wasting money and buying a carton? Here's everything you'll need to make this recipe. I'll also leave everything in the description box below, along with a link to the blog post with a printable recipe card. I also just want to note that I've put the wine and vinegar as optional because it adds some good depth of flavor, but it is going to make the broth kind of intense and may not work for all purposes, so I would say try it and decide for yourself if it's something that you want to include depending on what you're making. You also can absolutely use this recipe with fresh, non-scrapped veggies. It's still probably cheaper than store-bought, tastes better for sure, and is still zero waste because you can compost the veggies at the end rather than dealing with any packaging. Before we jump into it, if you are hanging around and haven't yet subscribed, or this is your first time here and you like this video, click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can get notifications whenever I put out a new video. I release new content weekly. Would love to have you stick around and always appreciate the support. When I do veggie prep every week, I hold on to my scraps and put them into a large mason jar that I keep in the freezer until it's full. You also don't need to defrost your veggies beforehand, but I do because I wouldn't be able to get them out of the jar otherwise. You want roughly equal parts of sweet and savory veggies. Sweet veggies are going to be things like carrots, bell pepper, parsnips, beets, corn cobs, and old roasted vegetables, where onions, leeks, mushroom stems, celery stalks, spinach, and squash fall into the savory category. The ratio doesn't need to be exactly equal, just close, and you can always supplement with some extra fresh veggies to balance things out if you need to. I like to add extra yellow onion to mine pretty much every time, and after doing it a couple times, you'll find what you like best in terms of flavor and be able to adjust to your own palate. It's also kind of fun to see how the flavor changes depending on what veggies you use. After prepping your fresh veggies to supplement any of your scraps, and then peeling and smashing your garlic, you'll throw the veggies, garlic, thyme, bay leaf, and peppercorns into a large pot and soften them over either a medium or high heat, depending on whether you're making a small or large batch of the broth. You'll also add the optional splash of wine at the beginning to make sure that the alcohol cooks off. If you add the alcohol, you may need to cook your veggies for a little bit longer, but you just want to make sure that there's no alcohol smell before you move on to the next step. I also had a little bit of trouble with math here and decided to add more garlic and fresh onion to my pot after the fact, and I'm glad I did because it turned out great. Next, you'll add your water and salt, and this would be the place where you would optionally add vinegar if you hadn't added the wine earlier. Once it's hit a boil, you reduce the water to a bubbling simmer and cook it covered for 30 minutes, then remove the lid and cook for an additional 15 to 20 minutes. So while it's cooking away, I've got a few comments on selecting what veggies to use. So just to kind of go over what veggies you want to use versus which ones you don't. Anything red, like onion skins, chard, beets, etc., is going to tint the stock purple, which isn't bad, but you'll just want to use the broth for recipes where color doesn't matter. And then starchy foods like potatoes are going to turn your stock gummy, so they're not really a good pick for homemade broth. Where cabbage, cauliflower, collards, Brussels sprouts, kale, and even zucchini skins may add some unwanted bitterness to your broth, so they're not going to be a good pick. Carrot tops, specifically the green part, are also questionable, but I haven't personally tried them and you may not mind them, so if you have them, you could try it and see if you like it. You can also make your veggie broth in batches, which is what I like to do, so I will typically wait until I can at least triple the recipe before I make it. If you're wondering if you can do this Instant Pot to cut down on time, I would say you can if you're in a pinch for veggie broth, but you are going to be sacrificing some flavor. If you want to know how to do it that way, you can check out the recipe card in the link in the description below. After it's cooked, you'll just need to strain it through a fine mesh sieve to catch the scraps. I tried doing this in a clear bowl so you could see, but I typically do it in a bowl with a spout on it because it's easier to pour it into mason jars, and I quickly realized that I wanted ease over visibility. The broth is going to be really hot, and you can definitely wait for it to cool down before handling it, or just use protection. I pour it out in batches, use a spoon or ladle to squeeze out as much as possible from my scraps, and then compost the scraps bit by bit. I also use the last bit of broth to kind of wash out my pot and make sure that I've gotten all the scraps out. And now we are ready to use it in another recipe, store it in the fridge, or freeze it for future use. We also get this moment of truth where we can try it and see if our efforts paid off. So I've made this broth quite a few times now, but this was actually the first time where I used vinegar, and wow, was it good. You can't see my face, but if you could, I was legitimately impressed. Enough that I even wanted to serve up a little bit more and drink it straight. The broth is way better than the store-bought stuff, which honestly tastes kind of watery and bland to me. This recipe is a great way to make full use of the veggies you've already bought, costs you nothing, requires very little hands-on time to make, and means you have one less packaged thing to add to your shopping list. If you make it a habit to store your scraps, you can have fresh veggie broth around all the time, and you get to be creative with ways to use it up. So that's it for today's recipe. If you try it out, let me know in the comments. You can also subscribe to my blog for recipes right to your inbox, and connect with me on social media for day-to-day content. If there's a recipe you would like to see from me, let me know that in the comments as well, be it an actual kind of normal recipe that is vegan or plant-based, or if there's something else zero waste that you'd like to make at home, let me know that as well. And don't forget to subscribe, click the bell, give this video a thumbs up, and come back next time. Bye.